Now, you may think that you want more motivation, but I don't think that's necessarily true. I think me and you, already have enough. We just need to distribute it more effectively. We need to carefully consider and deliberately choose where we place our motivation in life. Because metaphorically speaking, you are a donkey chasing a carrot on a stick, and you will chase some kind of carrot, i.e. a goal, for the rest of your life. And in this video, instead of trying to motivate the donkey, right, by whipping it or showing it some motivational video of David Goggins, we're going to deconstruct what the right carrot may be for you. Maybe even replacing it with a different root vegetable, or getting rid of it completely, right? And seeing if the donkey could move forward in life in the absence of any carrot at all. Essentially, right, to get rid of the metaphor, this video is about your aims in life and how what you aim for fundamentally affects your motivation and your well-being in life. In fact, it's my theory that there are some aims, if we can restructure our aims in a specific way, that mean the question of how much motivation we have access to ceases to be relevant. It is an infinite source at our disposal. And to begin explaining that, we need to start with Jimmy Carr, the British comedian, who on a podcast outlined a mental model around our desires that I found really interesting. Jimmy basically questioned what the underlying reasons were that we desire stuff, right? Things. Why do we want the new flashy product, or the car, the house, the relationship, the work promotion, the grades, the award, the accomplishment, the title, whatever, right? Well, his idea is that we don't actually desire the thing itself. The thing, the material possession or title or award, is arbitrary. What you actually want is how you think obtaining that thing will make you feel. What we ultimately desire is the feelings behind the things we think we want. Whether this be self-esteem or social status or love or meaning in life or safety and security, right? The list goes on and on of what kind of emotional cocktail is behind the things we desire. But Jimmy then proposed that if this is true, theoretically, we could cut out the material middleman, cut out the desire for the thing itself, and just focus on the emotional consequence. To put this in a kind of context, something that I do genuinely want is to be an author, right? And hopefully quite a successful one. Publish a book or two that means I can write about ideas that fascinate me full time. But why do I really want that? Well, that's because the process of writing gives my life a real deep sense of meaning, right? The feeling of meaning in life. And if I was successful as an author, then I would get the feeling of validation from the world that I can write something of value. If it is successful from a financial perspective, that would give me a feeling of safety and security that I can provide for my family, and that I can do that full time. I can curate my life around this meaningful practice of writing. And this is super interesting, right? Because it basically suggests that us as donkeys chasing carrots on a stick, right? The reason we do that is not for the carrot itself, really. It's for the emotional consequence, the emotional satisfaction when we finally reach that carrot. And so if we believe this theory to be true, if we believe in Jimmy Carr's model, then that requires a large restructuring of how we think about our aims in life, which can be a bit confusing and daunting, right? Luckily, there's a frame that I've been thinking about that can help us do this. I've mentioned in bits of content before about an idea known as finite and infinite games, originally coming from a book in the 1980s written by a guy called James Cass. But essentially what it outlines is that in life, we play two very distinct types of game, right? A finite game or an infinite game. A finite game has very clear set of rules and one primary objective. And the goal of the game is to win, right? And fulfill that ultimate objective. And when that happens, the game ends. Whereas an infinite game has a variable set of rules that can change across time, and multiple different objectives that also change across time. And so the main purpose and the main goal of an infinite game is to keep the game going, right? In sport, winning one particular match is a finite game. There's a clear set of rules that are implemented and controlled by the referee, where one team tries to score more points than the other team. That's the primary objective, right? And where at the end of the game, whoever has the most points wins and the game ends. Whereas being an athlete, right, the journey of an athlete is an infinite game, because there are an innumerable amount of factors that go into being a good athlete, and you can get better and better and better at multiple different metrics in order to do that. And the goal of the game is to continue to be a better athlete, to keep the game going. That's why it's an infinite game. Now, returning to Jimmy Carr's theoretical model earlier, which aspect do you think, if you're following me, is a finite game, and which one is an infinite game? Well, you can probably clearly see that the material middleman, the thing that you think you want, is a finite game, because once you get it, the game ends. Whereas the emotional consequence, the emotional cocktail that you'll experience when you get the thing, that's an infinite game. Because you never get to a point where you have maximal meaning in life, where you feel a maximal amount of love or self-esteem. Those are metrics that the primary purpose is to keep them going, to keep maintaining those positive feelings. And in my opinion, right, it is far better for our motivation and our positive emotion in life to actually aim for the infinite dimension of the things we want, aiming for the feelings. I actually think as well that pursuing finite games and finite things is quite dangerous, and I'm going to end this section with telling you why. I heard about this idea a couple of years ago, known as gold medal syndrome. It's essentially the recurring theme when an Olympic athlete achieves something at the highest level, right? Grinds for years, potentially even decades, to do things that most people would think are impossible on a world stage, win, right? Get to the top of their game, get the gold medal, and afterwards fall into a depression. They achieve all they ever wanted, right? And the reward they receive is a collapse of motivation, an identity crisis, and a flurry of negative emotions. This is because the game they played for so many years, that gave them so much joy, anticipating that final win, had ended, right? And as much as aiming for something like a gold medal is hugely respectable and honorable, at the end of the day, it's still a finite game. Because when you achieve the thing, the game ends. And the human mind doesn't really like finite games, especially from, as I said, a motivation and positive emotion perspective. And as the cringy Instagram quote pages always tell us, right, it's about the journey, not the destination. And actually from a neurological perspective, that's true. And so my question is, can we find a way to approach life where we gain the maximal benefits from pursuing meaningful things without the disappointment and identity crisis of achieving them and then questioning what's next? Well, yes, I think there is. I think the answer is pursuing the infinite, right? Playing an infinite game. We can have the primary objective of keeping the game going. We can continue to pursue things that are worthwhile and experience the benefits to our motivation and positive emotion throughout our life. We want to play an infinite game. Therefore, the restructuring of our aims in life is to think less about the arbitrary material middleman and focus our aims on the feelings, the emotional cocktail, and the infinite dimension of the things we think we want. And now I'd like to finish this video with a little bit of a practical strategy of how I'm trying to do this in my own life. How can I turn my life as a whole into some kind of infinite game? Because your mind will always want to sink back into finite means for finite ends. And I think that's to do with our ego, or the chimp part of our mind that becomes so attached to the desire for external gratification, right? But I think the answer comes down to something I'm calling training the infinite muscle, which is essentially reinforcing the beliefs around prioritizing infinite games. This could be through creating mental reminders or some kind of reflexive practice like journaling, where you remind yourself to prioritize the infinite. Or when you do find yourself in that state of motivation loss and emotional dissatisfaction from chasing something finite, you need to process those emotions and remind yourself through that you should be pursuing the infinite dimension, and that the emotional difficulty was a consequence of pursuing a finite game. Because it's my philosophy now that aiming for the infinite part of the different areas in our life, in our journey of personal development, in our career, in looking after our health and in our relationships, that is such a better strategy to live a more deep and meaningful life. Because all the emotions and the experiences that we ultimately desire, right, the meaning, the love, the connection, the motivation, are all, I believe, on the other side of walking the infinite path. Thank you so much for watching.
Joel Clifton, yeah, please sub and comment and like. But on a serious note, the content is very good. It makes you think about yourself and your life differently.